Call the meeting in the Municipal Airport Authority to order. This meeting's Tuesday, July 11th. Do we have a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
I so move.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to add one thing to the agenda.
Okay.
And that would be just the next steps on the project.
All right.
If we're okay with that.
Yep. We will put that after number 3E. All right. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So,
Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Hagan.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Beckman.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of June 27th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Hagan. Aye. Berg.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Beckman.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye. We have a motion to approve airport vouchers in the total of $195,790.97.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Hagan.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Beckman.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye. Do we have a motion to approve the individual vouchers A through E?
Motion.
We have a motion. We have a second. Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Hagan.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Beckman.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye. Okay. 3.1. Mr. Berg, parking.
Oh, okay. Well, I think since our last meeting, one of the thoughts is what's our next step for the whole ramp, because we're not really sure what the cost is going to be, how it ties in, the time and everything else. But in just discussing a little bit, it seems like the next step would be for us to do an RFQ for an architect and a contract manager. And, you know, we have to advertise for 3 weeks to do that. And then I think when those people would submit, we can interview the different people that would submit proposals, and then we would pick one. And just with the delay of the terminal, I think it would be important for us to move on this if we can. What I would anticipate is I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with a RFQ for a contractor, construction manager, and an architect, using the same process that we did with the terminal, and then to have a recommendation for our August 28th meeting or August 22nd meeting on who we would pick. And then when we do that, then I think those people would refine the cost, and they would refine some of the options, and then we're not making a decision on the ramp, but then we'd have harder numbers to make that decision. So that would be kind of my purpose. And I guess the other thing, I think at the big picture, I think we need to make a couple of determinations on what we want, because we do this RFP, and I would say it would do exactly what we've been talking about, the 900 stalls and that type of thing. The only other thing I would add is I think we should add that we plan on doing a sky ramp connecting. And then I think the issue on whether we do a roof or another floor, that we need to find out what those numbers are. If it costs the same amount to do a roof as add another floor, maybe we add another floor. But so with that background, Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we do RFQ for construction manager and architect for a parking ramp, and that we shoot for a process that would allow us to make a decision at our August 22nd date. And I would just include in that we'd be looking at a sky ramp connecting.
Yep. Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I would just ask you, do you want to give some basic parameters as you suggested? What our RFQ that we suggest we're anticipating a 1,000-car ramp with walkway.
Yeah, I guess I would use the numbers that we've talked about as a commission and we've agreed to.
Okay. And Sean and Stacy, I think this would just be modifying what we did as we went through the process for the terminal expansion.
Engage Cumming Group, that's who does the CMAR stuff. And I mean, we'll see, it's gonna take them some time to put together the RFQ and all the data. It took probably a month and a half to just get the one together for the terminal. Granted, the parking structure isn't as intense as
The
the
scope
terminal.
there is pretty.
So I can get a hold of Danny Rasmussen and see how quickly they can put something together. The architect RFQ is pretty basic, just
Yep.
example to go with what that would be. But, the CMAR is a little bit more intense. And I know these guys know firsthand what they went through to negotiate a CMAR. It's not easy regardless of the scope.
You can do it.
Yeah. We'll put it together and see what we can come up with.
Okay, given the timelines, I guess we'd have to move on that very quickly with the similar process.
Yeah, I think Mr. Chairman, I think typically what we did with the terminal is we hired the architect, then we hired the construction manager, the CMAR.
Yep.
And I think in light of all the discussion that's been around the parking garage, and I don't want to call it a simple project, but it's a pretty straightforward project with what Walker's put together and others have put together. So I think what I would say is a little bit unique is I'd probably go on an RFQ for both the CMAR and the architect, and then probably end up picking the architect first and having them help pick the construction manager. And if we have to delay or change things, at least we'll know who's interested at that point.
Okay, great. Any other discussion?
Well, the only question I have is, do we include the Skyway or the Skywalk, whatever, with the parking ramp? Or do we back up and include that with the terminal building?
Too late for the
Or is that separate?
I'd say who pays the most money?
And I think the FAA can do funding for the Skyway, but not for the parking ramp.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if there was a potential for.
But it's very low on FAA's
Yeah.
project list too, I think.
But we need the design and everything at this point to be included, which would allow us, I believe, to do the funding. If there were federal, state, or local funds available for the walkway, we could certainly look at
Mr. Chair,
that. Yes.
Sean, with respect to the walkway, if and when the ramp gets built and the walkway is done, we would be out of pocket for the walkway and then be in line for a reimbursement based on FAA criteria?
Through a possible grant, but what we have in our CIP far outweighs priority-wise than a walkway.
Okay,
All
so
of
it's
the
based
ramps
on,
we have to do, not only the new ramp for the terminal expansion, the reconstruction of the existing ramp, the North GA and the South GA, those are much higher priority. Our chances of getting AIP money for a walkway are zero, even though it's eligible. So what we would do is we would hold the front end the cost and put it into a passenger facility charge application. And someday we would recover it. Obviously the terminal would be has that, the ramps and other eligible costs. So it would be a PFC recovery at some point.
Okay. All right, Joan, have you got the 2-page motion?
Suppose you want them typed up in advance, sorry. You do much better than I do.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve a RFQ for architectural and CMAR services around the construction of the parking ramp. Initially targeted at 1,000 spots with a connecting ramp between the parking garage and the terminal, and determination as to roof for additional floors at that point. Anything else in that motion? And the target date, this is going to be ready for approval and publication August 22nd meeting.
Maybe. That's the target.
Mr. Chair, I know in dealing with the CMAR process for the terminal, sometimes the size of the project isn't as important as their process. I can't speak for them, but it was a cumbersome process to go through that CMAR because you're choosing a construction manager as well. So it's not just the construction manager we have, and that was, it was eye-opening. The process was eye-opening and time-consuming. I would give yourself a little more time.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
I appreciate Rick's input because, I think because that was funded with FAA, there was a very stringent kind of process that we went through. This is different. We don't need to go through that process. But what I'd like to do is probably have the same people involved in this process and try and use a very similar process, not to slow it down, but provide the same checks and balances, which I think was very thoughtful. And this would give us 6 weeks from our August 22nd meeting, so I understand it's a tight time frame and we can certainly change it. But I think coming out of the chute, if we can plan for that, follow a similar process, but modify it.
Because the walkway is eligible for federal funds, it would be treated the same as if it were a federal project, just because of the walkway portion of it. So we would have to follow all of the FAA bidding requirements to make certain that we cover the costs of the walkway.
Then I would do it in 2 projects, do the ramp and then do the walkway separate.
I mean, I think what we need to do here is just, we get the tight timeline, we know what we need to do. Rather than start backing off with unknown parameters to 24 weeks, 36, whatever. Set the deadline, see what we can get in place. This is a little bit different. This is saying we're selecting the architect. We're also saying we want a construction manager at risk. And once those two are, said Mr. Berg's statement, architect selected, architect selection to selection of CMAR, we can have assistance there. But
They can be done together because the heavy lifting is already done by Cumming Group.
Yeah.
So the contract we have in place now with McGough is basically done. It's just a matter of changing a few sections, dollar amounts and so forth. So the federal requirements will be met in that current contract. There's just some minor tweaks.
okay.
Okay.
So a lot of the work is already done.
So they, realize we put the time frame on it, but
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, too, I would say, obviously, there's gonna be a lot of different barriers, and I would encourage what those are to bring them back to us. We'll try and work through them when those pop up.
Well, I don't think we want to get into a situation where we're lagging one or the other. If there's some efficiencies of doing the expansion and the ramp at the same time, different staging areas, I would hate to go into 2 years of construction and remodeling and expansion, and then add another 1.5 years to 2 years for a ramp. And so if we are going to, we're going to do it all on the same time scale and be ready to go. So I'm hopeful. I know there's a tight timeline, but I'm hopeful we're able to move very quickly and efficiently on this. Get this going. All right. Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Hingham.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Captain.
Aye.
Heckman.
Aye.
Osborne.
Aye. All right. Thank you. Item number 4 is our May 2023 financial statement. We're going to be dedicating the rest of this meeting pretty much to budget. I would still like to work on and we'll continue to work on sort of our dashboard approach to the monthly financials, getting those into focus as quickly as possible.
Dashboard is there.
Yeah.
The rest of the stuff is what other members have requested.
Right. Yeah. So, any discussion or questions about the May financials, or do we want to just concentrate today on the budget for next year?
Everything is in order, everything is on track.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, on the May financials, that would simply be my question for Sean. Is there anything that's off track compared to the budget that we set? Or anything that you want to highlight? If not, I'm moving on.
Everything's in order.
Cool.
We could, just very quickly, some of our revenue items, the differential between actual and budget is primarily timing at this point.
Yes.
And we're comfortable it's not a significant change, it's increase in revenue.
The departmental agencies are doing pretty well this year, but else is pretty much on track with landing fees and parking.
And again, you've got about a $300,000 variation between actual and budget expenses and 560, 560. Anything there that is of concern other than?
I think the big thing is that probably because depreciation is in this year and it hasn't been in the past. I'm not including depreciation in the budget. Well, that's probably the biggest thing. I would take that out. Because that's not determined until we bought it.
That's our new, yeah, it was bees.
Right. Yeah, we start to throw things.
For us non-accountants, the rules have changed from accounting standpoints. It's been confusing. We will eventually catch up to it. All right. Do we have a motion to receive and file the May financial statement?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Megan.
Aye.
Bird.
Aye.
Appleton.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. Item number 5, excuse me, proposal from Motorola on a radio system.
Noise. This is the transition that we probably should have done a couple of years ago when the city and county and all one did, but the chief was gonna explain the wrap right over.
Right on the side.
So this is a process that we looked at a while back. I'm not familiar with how we got missed on the initial purchase when this went out for city entities. But basically what we're doing is taking an old one tower system where we have communication with just our individual emergency services. This allows us to communicate, the new system will allow us to communicate directly with the city of Fargo, Fargo Fire, Fargo PD, Sanford Ambulance, any state entity, which basically all of them now operate on this system. We're one of maybe a few, if not the only one in Cass County that is not using this system. And so this system will put us in line, and how we currently communicate with those entities is a patch through Fargo Fire, which can be unreliable at times, and it has been unreliable. It gets checked once a week. Lately it has been working the way it should, but it only allows us to communicate directly with Fargo Fire, not all the other entities. We have to request those resources through Fargo Fire or through cell phone, which takes time. This new system, like I said, it's a switch of a channel on the radio, and we have instant access to all the entities that we would in an emergency. And it got pushed up a little bit because when I first took over, I did a tour at Triple RDC and met with Brian, and I found out that there is a current grant program in place that will reimburse us up to $1,500 per radio we purchase. That expires in May of 2024. So that's how this got pushed up sooner than what we were expecting.
Mr. Chairman, so we're reimbursed $1,500 per radio?
Per radio.
If we do
so-
this before next May?
Yes.
So what's the net cost to us with the reimbursement?
Through the reimbursement, we're looking at getting $18,000 back off of that quote that's in your
Mr.
presentation.
Chairman, I move we approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Any further discussion?
The
Question.
balance of the cost goes through the airline rates and charges, so at the end of the day, it costs us zero.
Say it again, Sean, did I miss
The
something?
balance of the cost that is assessed to the airlines and the
Oh.
rates and charges, so at the end of the day, this costs us zero.
Regardless.
And on that quote, I actually caught something yesterday that I didn't initially. They quoted us for 8 multi-chargers, which we only need 2. So that's gonna reduce that quote by another 5,000.
Any other
And
discussion?
Mr. Chairman, this also allows you to communicate with Cass County Sheriff and Emergency Management.
Yes.
Okay.
Critical.
Call the roll, please.
Again,
Aye.
Bird.
Aye.
Appleton.
Aye.
Aye.
Costa.
Aye. All right, thank you. All right, a motion to approve the budget when you have. Sean, if you could, or I don't know if our bookkeeping accounting services are part of this, but okay. If we could very quickly take not quickly, but run through the budget, and it might help again just to, for the members of the authority to sort of understand the accounts, the major accounts that we use, and how they enter into the budget, and how funds flow in between those accounts. If you wanna start us with Fund 561, and just a brief description.
Mr. Chairman, before we start, just in the higher context, we have to submit a budget for 2024 to the city by a certain date, or what is the timing on us approving this?
The tradition that for many, many years has been at this meeting in July, well, the last meeting in June or the first meeting in July is when the preliminary budget is presented. And then the certification of the mills is either done at this meeting or no later than the second meeting in July is when they certify the mill.
The city would certify the
We
mill.
certify the mill every 2 days per the
We-
state statute.
We certify,
We certify it to the city.
and we need to have a budget before we do that.
Yeah,
That
they
kinda-
just get a copy of it.
Okay, right.
They can't change it.
We may, yeah, we request a dollar amount, which translates to,
We need to know what we're gonna spend before we certify the mill.
if we're asking for bills, the first step. And at the next meeting in July, we can probably finalize the budget. So as we start here, if you could, Sean, talk about, 561. That being sort of our major account, how that works, and help everybody understand the flows in between those.
So 561, 7,004, you see that is the operations and maintenance account for revenues and expenditures. You'll see the primary source of revenues include rental of hangars and FBO, so that's all the private hangar leases that are there, so the amounts that are due are per the lease agreement. So there's no fudging in those numbers. Scheduled flight fees is right below that, United, Allegiant, Frontier, American, and Delta. That's based upon the projected landed weight of aircraft that the carriers will be operating in 2024. And I can tell you today, they don't know what aircraft they're gonna be landing here in December. But yet we're trying to project out into 2024 the mix of aircraft that will make up that landed weight to result in $293,000 in scheduled landing fees. Below that is primarily cargo, that you can see there with FedEx, UPS, and so forth.
Just a,
Oh,
let's just.
hold on a second. I was on page 1.
Yeah, if you look at.
You're on page-
We kind of walk through this, Sean, which one you're working
You're on
on. Four.
I guess my page is up.
It's, okay, I believe it's page 4. Is that the packet?
So it has Fund 561 annual
Yeah.
or airport operation and maintenance.
Yep.
Okay.
It says preliminary 62223 in the upper right-hand corner. So as we look at this, intergovernmental revenue, those are what?
So you're looking at the dashboard?
I'm looking at preliminary on page 4.
Yeah, that's the dashboard, so if you wanna get into,
Okay, let's start with the dashboard at this level.
it doesn't tell me anything, so.
Okay.
Just all get on the same page. I don't care what page we start with, however you want to do it.
Well, which one do you want to go to, Sean?
The users probably start with page 6. Which is on the bottom. So you can see where interest or pool cash, $780,000. That's the combination of input from First International Bank and PFM. On the investments, you can see people.
Hold on here, hold on.
It's 6.
That one? Okay, and you want to start right down here. How's
We're on
one?
the revenue.
All right.
So we're just looking at the 561 grant. That's one. If you look at page 7, that rolls into page 8, those are the projected revenues derived from hangars and space operators. So you can see The big one on page 7, Fargo Jet Center, we're projecting $492,000 in revenue from Fargo Jet Center in 2024. The others, as I said earlier, are based on their lease agreement, so whatever the lease is, the square footage times, 12, 15 cents a square foot, that's what that comes up with. So total rental of hangars there is $793,806, that's on page 8, as you can see. Right below that is the scheduled landing fees for United, Allegiant, Frontier, American, and Delta, $293,000 is projected based on the mix of aircraft. That's at the bottom of page 8. Now rolling to the top of page 9.
Hold on. Let's go back to the dashboard here. I think we're rolling through numbers here really fast. And I understand everybody wants to get through these, but what we're looking at as we start with the 2024 budget is in Fund 561, total income of $13,875,000, is that correct? We go back to number 4 in the budget, page 4.
That's the projected, correct.
Okay.
It's a combination of all these numbers.
Yep. And so, as we look at this, so as you've talked about, interest revenue 780, miscellaneous, nothing, about $5,000. Rental fees, which is, as you run through, 11 million. Miscellaneous income of 165,000. And then operating revenues of 1.8 million. So, that's the total revenue that we're projecting. Where does parking revenue come in?
Parking revenue is the right page.
Is there a separate account?
Yeah, no, there's a separate account. Why isn't that coming out?
That's B plus. Page 10, it's page 10.
It's on page 10. 6.7 million is what our TS fund must be plus for 2024.
Okay. And does that come into account 561 or where does
That's
that?
correct. It's 561.
Where
It's
in this dashboard, the 13.8 million, 13.9 million,
6.7 of that was parking.
6.7. I think that's where it's a little confusing in here when we're looking at our revenue sources. We've got a major revenue source, over half our revenue almost is parking. But when we look at it in this dashboard on 561, we don't see it. I think that's confusing to a lot. How could,
Real clear on the detail.
well, but, what we've got is total income here, 13,875, 768. We should be able to, so it is in that, the 6.7 resides within that 13.875, correct? But there's not a line item here that we can look at to see, so
It's within 36311.
the 363, that's, okay, you're talking, it's within that 11 million, so maybe what we need is a sub.
But then do you get one for landing fees, do you get one for FBO revenue? I mean,
Well, I think I'm lost already. So I would suggest it might be helpful if we just stuck with the one that we're going through here, kind of get all the way through, and then kind of revisit the dashboard and see how we can tweak that.
I understand. Now, is that,
So I mean, it might be helpful for me just to keep going through page 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13
Okay.
until we get through it. That's okay.
But you make the ties here from page 6, back to page 4.
You're gonna have to speak up a little bit too, Sean. I'm getting old and hard of hearing down this end, so.
So on page 6, if you look at interest on pooled cash, you'll see airport fund, 780,000. That ties into the interest revenue on page 4, $780,000. Okay, miscellaneous revenue, $5,000 on page 6, that ties into the $5,000 miscellaneous revenue on page 4 of the dashboard. If you go back and forth, see the totals of what you're gonna see on here tie back into the dashboard. That makes sense? If you look on page, then you have to total, so the 11,124,456, that's on page 4 on the dashboard. Then you just have to start totaling all of these other line items on here, which comes down to,
I think, Sean, it'd be helpful if we just went through these pages, just like you were doing.
that's what I started to do.
Wait, no, if you could do that, that would be helpful.
Mr. Chair, I think one thing too, that the report presented, if you clicked on it, would be interactive and explode to that and go right to that. And we don't have that here, so we do have to go back and forth between the consolidated or the dashboard and those individual line items. And I think most of us would be easier to be able to click on it if we were inside of the accounting program looking at it. Might be easier if the sit down with the bookkeeper doing it too.
Okay,
Where do you wanna go?
well,
Page 7,
This is very simple to understand.
page 8, you were at page 8, so I'd keep going to page 9.
All of those totals. So on page 8, you see that $793,806.68. That is the total revenue projected for all of those items that are start on page, basically 7 and finish there in the middle of page 8. Okay, the largest revenue source that's on there is a projection of $492,000 from Fargo Jet Center. That's the percentage of gross revenue and fuel flow through projections for the year.
Okay, so is that fuel, is that in this part?
Yes, 4 cents per gallon and 1.5% of their revenue. That's what makes up the $492,000.
So, okay. 4 cents a gallon, and what was the split? Is there another split?
No, it's all, the 492,000 includes both. 4 cents per gallon and 1.5% of their gross revenue.
Of the gross income.
That's how they pay us, along with the, ground rent as well.
And plus their ground rent's in there too.
Yeah, that's, you'll see those listed at Fargo Jet Center hangar, Fargo Jet Center, or JP Development is Fargo Jet Center as well.
But he
I see it in there several times, but the
Yeah.
492 is 4 cents a gallon plus 1.5% of gross.
Plus 1.5% of their gross. That's correct.
And then down below where they have Jet Center, that would be their hangar rent.
Well, that along with JP Development, those are their entities that make up Fargo Jet Center. Does that make
But
sense?
he breaks out this on purpose.
Yep.
So, you're clear on rental of hangars and FTO, then the scheduled flight fees is right below. That's what we project in terms of landing fees from the scheduled airlines. At the bottom of page 8 to the top of page 9, that's the projected landing fees primarily for FedEx and UPS. Makes up $243,000 along with the feeders. So the $47,000 on page 8 at the bottom of page 8, along with $110,000 FedEx and $82,000 from UPS, those are cargo landing fees. Any questions on that? So page 9 is the breakdown of building rentals. I project the gift shop at $125,000. We get 10% of their gross revenue. Avis Rent-A-Car, it's a projection, $234,000. It's self-explanatory on the line. Frontier Airlines, what they pay in terminal rent, Jetway rental.
How is that rent calculated? Is that like a percent of their
10%
gross?
of the gross revenue from each rental contract. With some exceptions, we don't take revenue for the sale of automobiles. So if they sell cars, we don't get 10%
Sure.
of that.
That's 10% of their gross rentals.
That's correct. So any other questions on page 9? North Star Insurance, $20,851. That's in their lease agreement, so that is what they would owe. Delta Airlines, we project that they're going to pay $160,000 in terminal rent. It's a projection because it's 20% equal cost and then there's 80% based on components. Skydyne, 285,000, that's what we project in terms of alcohol and food sales. That's on page 9. So if you look at page 10 at the top, building rentals is just under 2.7 million. We go down to the next section, rental of expansion area, that's primarily the cash rent for farm leases. MDC Incorporated, that's the 43,160, that's a rental for the corporate area, or for the FedEx facilities. Cass County is for the sheriff's office. UPS is for their facility. The airport property is the 10,241, that is Mike Mullinger's hangar that he built for Bemidji Aviation, which is the UPS feeder.
What was that?
Mike Mullinger built a hangar that is leased to Bemidji Aviation. So they're the UPS feeder operation for cargo. MDC2, that's the corporate air hangar for FedEx. Okay, so, and then as we talked earlier, SP Plus, the projection I got from Greg Pearson was 6.7 million for parking revenue in 2024.
So is that our net
That is
with
the
them?
most.
Okay, and then so what we pay SP Plus is in the expense side.
Yeah, and we'll see that on the
Okay.
expense side, which is 906,000 is the projection. So the difference obviously would be the net. And then there's some miscellaneous reimbursements that we get, 165,000 and so forth. So all of those numbers tie back to the dashboard. The 11,124,456 goes back on that page 4, 11,124,456. So you can start to see the totals that are included in the dashboard.
Sean, the expansion area for Cass County at 48,000, is that just a land lease?
Correct.
Okay,
25 cents.
so that's about $4,000 a month.
Correct. $11.30.
What is that?
These things.
Where the sheriff's office are.
Oh,
Used to be the old
yep,
Army
yep,
Reserve
yep,
building.
yep, yep.
Any questions on the revenues that are there? So you look on page 11, the 13,875,768, that ties back to page 4, the 13,875,068. So all of those things there make up the sausage. Goes into the 561 revenue for the 7,004 account. Okay, we're just talking 7,004.
Okay, you just lost me on page 11, Sean.
Page 11, okay, so you look at the top, gross profit, 13,875,768.
Okay, I don't see
Numbers.
that. Oh, I see.
Yep,
Okay.
that ties back to the 13,875,68 on page 4.
On 4, yep.
But that's the total of all the income that
correct.
we've just gone through.
That is correct.
And Sean, that's where I wanna take you back, is that as we look at the dashboard, and Rick, I know you talked about it exploding in all detail, but we've got almost 80% of our revenue in one line item. We need a breakout of that 11 million, because that's really where we need to concentrate. You know, when you look at this, rental fees, you don't think that that's where your parking revenue is. And if we look at this, parking revenue at 6.7 million is almost half of our revenue. So within this dashboard, I think we need just a little more detail, that going back and saying we have to go through 11 pages to get to what's in that 11 million. That 11 million can probably be made up of 3 or 4 key items. And we need to see that to understand it's that we would be missing a huge part of this picture by looking at this dashboard, that parking is $6.7 million. And parking is unique in the way that it's recorded from a gross parking revenue. And then in the different part of it, the expenses. Help me understand, how do we pay SP Plus? It's they pay us a guaranteed payment plus some percentage of revenue.
No, they pay us the net revenue, So when we get their report, they show the gross revenue, they show all of their expenses, and then they remit the net. So they keep the revenue and then remit to us
The net,
after the expenses for each month.
and how much do they charge as part of those
We
expenses?
looked at that at the last meeting, it was what, 13,000 a month to get their fee.
And that's not based on volume analysis,
It's based on the number of parking spaces, as we explained at the last meeting, so they did an adjustment, as you recall, when we reached economy lot and now the new spots come online for this year. They increased that, we looked at that at the last meeting.
And during COVID, we switched that contract to accommodate them how?
It went from a concession contract to a management agreement. That's what they did.
And
across
the
country.
difference between concession and management is what?
They paid us a straight percentage this year of the revenue. A guaranteed annual minimum, we were at 270,000 a month, does that sound right? 200-some thousand a month minimum. And then as the revenue grew, we got bigger percentages up to the point where towards the end of the year, we were probably getting 85% of the revenue, and then they include all expenses.
So then they asked that we switch back. As that became more advantageous to us,
Yeah,
kind of switch back.
basically, they told their airports they didn't have the choice, Baltimore and other airports, that we don't take them actually, that's what was happening.
No, I understand.
And I don't think they'll ever go back to a concession agreement at airports anymore. I just don't see plans, but
Okay. Well, I'm just concerned that, as we look at this, is that, and again, our budget serves two purposes. There's a very intense internal interpretation working with the budget. So we also have to be transparent to other people looking in at our budget and help them understand it in a very clear and easy format. So what I would ask in the dashboard here is, of that 11 million, that's a large portion of our revenue. Is just one line item called rental fees. And let's get a little more detail in 3 or 4 major revenue items there.
Yeah, what's your, if I understand it too, Mr. Chairman, what you're saying is rather than 11.1, we have parking 6.7 million, building rent 2.7.
Yeah.
And then the rest can be combined as
Yeah.
miscellaneous
Very
rental income.
Okay. Any other questions on the revenue side?
okay, so
All right, and so what we're saying is that in our 23 budget, which we're tracking very closely to, correct? So our 23 budget coming in at 12.1 million, we're anticipating 24 budget forecast about a 1.6, $1.7 million increase in revenue from budget to budget in 23, 24.
So my only question at a high level is last year our revenue was 18 million. And what we're projecting this year is 12 million. And what we're projecting next year is 13 million. So are we just being real conservative in our revenue projections, or is there some?
The difference is there are no CARES grants, there's no COVID grants
Okay, that was about 5 million.
or more.
Okay, thanks.
The CARES grants, are we gonna continue to see those? Just say we had something come up, reimbursement through CARES money.
Yeah, so we had 14 million left in our CARES grant, and we submitted a development addendum on June 1st for 10.5 million, which includes, Jeff helped me out here, the East Exit Plaza, or the East Economy Lot. There was a whole bunch of projects that were completed that the FAA allowed us to submit for reimbursement. So there's 10.5 million that we're gonna recover in that first CARES grant. We just did a drawdown for an additional 153,000 for some other expenditures. And then the final development addendum can be submitted on or after October 1st. That will help to clean up other projects that we've completed, like the security system upgrade, the checkpoint expansion that we did, that was held up because it had to have a National Environmental Protection Agency review, or whatever review. There's some other minimal
Sure.
things.
Sean, are we gonna see then from 2023 instead of 12 million in income, is that 10.5 in CARES grant gonna run through the income statement?
It's not in
22
2024,
million.
it'll be in 2023.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, that's the 12.1 will actually be 22.6. And just to refresh everybody, the CARES grant came in with COVID, and it was in what year, and what was the total?
2020 for 21.6 million,
20,
21.6 million.
and that's anticipated to be used for operating expenses over the COVID timeframe.
In development addendum, yeah. So then we had a CARISA grant for 3.5 million. Concession relief grant for 102,970.
Un-
102,970.
102 million. Okay.
There's our terminal.
Yeah.
There was an ARPA grant for 6.1 million, and then an additional concession relief grant for 411,079. So our total between the 5 grants was $31,869,285.
32 million, which is going to distort our budget.
Did for all airports, so,
Yeah.
so, that's a good thing. I guess we could have told the government no. and-
No, but it's the type of thing as we look back over COVID time period, all companies are dealing with this, that they have these big lumpy amounts that are coming through the income statement. All right, so 2024 budget at 13.8. I know you can't answer this at this point, but it sounds like we've got about 10 million in potentially available COVID money still.
No, that should be in our bank account any day.
No, I'm talking remaining now from the CARES grant. After that 10 million,
There's 3 million something left. We already drew down a bunch of it.
I'm just trying to say, so in this budget, if that money were to enter it, it'd be the 13,875 plus another 3 million. That would bring us closer to 16,875,
I'm not-
if it's available
I
in
mean, the
2020.
FA wants that money in our account by December 31st of this year.
The 3 million.
3 million, everything that's remaining, so it'd be a 2020.
So that would wipe out, there would not be no further COVID money at this point.
That's the intent, that's what we've been told. They want it in our bank account closed out by the end of the year.
So we're actually probably gonna see revenues, we could see revenues in 2023 of our operating income, 12.1, the 10.5 we've already seen, and another 3, so we can be 25, 26 million.
Not in the
revenue.
561 account, because the majority of the development addendums are paid on the 563 account. They're not operational costs. Very, very little operational costs. So
Why
you
did
won't see it
10.5 go into operation?
10.5, no, the 10.5 will go into construction and improvement account. 10.5 will go into operations.
So that won't affect the income here.
No. There'll be some minor amounts, but nothing in the millions.
Okay.
The development addendums are reimbursed to the 562. So where would you like to go with expenses? That's on page 11
Expenses?
for 561, and I did give you a narrative, a written narrative of what's in most of the expenses in your thing. So the wages, what you see on page 11, public airport full-time staff, which is 7,004, the 1,100, 1,768,6. That includes a 3% cost of living. It includes 4 additional positions. We traditionally have always kept 2 to 3 additional positions in the budget, whether or not they're filled, for operations attendants, equipment technician, additional airfield equipment operators. Like I said, we've included those in past budgets and we haven't filled those, but we may be in a position now to get Dan another full-time person in 2024. as obviously we start construction, there's gonna be some additional things that will take place there and get some staff on board.
So with this budget, you're making the request that the board consider a 3% COLA. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 new positions that are banded and graded.
It's actually 2 additional, we've always kept 2 positions, one equipment operator and 1 full-time building attendant, and all the past budgets have been there, whether or not they've been filled or not, so it's really 2 more additional.
All right, and if we could just pause for a second here, 3% COLA, do we have a recommendation from our human resources, group as to what would keep us sort of in market?
They're seeing anywhere from 2 to 5%, city's looking at 2%, I believe, Commissioner Strand.
We are.
County's looking at 5% is what we were told, and of course,
Yeah,
looking at 2.5%, Moore's looking at 3.5%.
That's a recommendation from the department heads, but we haven't acted on anything yet.
So I guess that's to be determined. 3% is what I put in there as kind of a happy medium.
3% placeholder, and we probably need to have some discussions about this. There'll be additional discussions, so we get benefits, health insurance and different things, but I'm not clear, we've always approved 2 positions and just kind of kept them available if we could find somebody, or
If the need arises to hire additional staff, and our building staff does need additional resources, like I said, that's been in the budget for the past, but either we found through part-time, but finding part-time people right now for Dan and his crew is almost impossible. It is impossible to find part-time.
yeah, I just don't like having approved open positions that we aren't actively recruiting for. It's just,
That's how we've always done it.
yeah, no, I understand that. I understand that's how it's always been done. It's just, we're gonna approve the positions, then we should actively recruit to fill it, rather than interviews.
Yeah, so I guess a couple questions. So this is just our budget. When do
Right.
we make decisions about compensation and salaries? Is this the decision we're making, or does that happen at some other time?
Compensation and salaries is already taken care of because we're on an 11-step pay plan, so that's already set.
So we don't make a decision on that as a board?
We have a decision band method, some modified, but there is a pay scale. I don't believe that we disband the position evaluation committee.
So no one really evaluates. I'm just
Yeah.
curious, because it's like,
They're
From the end-
evaluated every day.
from the end of 2022 to what we're proposing for next year is a 25% increase in the salary line item, all things rolled up.
It's a big number.
And I guess my question is, if we're not making any decisions on that, are we doing what we should as a board? I mean, the city, you guys must make decisions.
Well, that's
Employees
where
or
our
not.
system came from the city and the transfer over and the transfer out. But we do not have in place, as you're saying, a robust system of trying to justify that.
Yeah.
In this environment, it's a little frightening.
Well, to me, I don't wanna waste any more time on this, but I need to learn more about that, because I think it's, quite frankly, salaries have been really substantially going up, and, how do we know that our staff is being paid appropriately or not? I mean,
So when the position evaluation committee met, they had just completed a study for the fire department, our aircraft rescue and firefighting staff. So we went out into market and did a study, and I think the agreement was to look at it, every 3 to 5 years. So the same would be true for our building attendants, our mechanics, our equipment operators, for our office staff as well, to go out and do that study. But it's done every 3 to 5 years, and that sets a range, which then this board would look at and or a designated committee
I'm just commenting, I don't wanna take
Yeah.
any more time, but I think
No,
as a board member, I'd like a better handle on what we're doing, why we're doing it, and are we fairly compensating people? So the only other comment I would have is one of the things we did discuss was potentially bringing some sort of CFO type contract or person or role to support our staff. And so would that potentially be part of these new positions, or is that something we should add in as a kind of on our projected budget? Not that we're gonna do it, but should that be plugged in?
As we go through this, I think that's a good point. These are placeholders for the budget at this point, but if we are gonna consider any additional positions other than these listed here, like a CFO, we should add into this budget, that we would have that. If you'd like to, also, I would suggest we bring in our contractor that does, human capital management for us and have them kind of walk us through what they're seeing in the market. Because we just absolutely can't fall behind and start losing employees. We've got to be careful. I don't think as a tax funded entity, we should be setting the market or leading the market. That's just a personal opinion. If you'd like, and we kind of go through this and say we would like to have a CFO position here, then we would put it in the budget at this point so we have the ability to add it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should discuss that at some point, what that role would be, and is that helpful or not to the staff?
The object should lock out against the wall, right?
What's that? I didn't hear.
Up against the wall, I think.
Just talking to someone in the back.
Somebody wasn't muted.
Alright. If we would wanna do that, if we wanna just. This would really just be a placeholder, but increase the wages by, I would just swag it at 150 to 200 to include a CFO position.
Sure.
And as we go through that, you want to just make these friendly changes and then approve them all.
So,
And
Mr. Chair, so then you're gonna increase the budget amount 150 to 200,000 just for a CFO? Okay.
pick your 150, 200. It's an all-in to this. 200 with benefit package and everything.
I guess the function of a CFO is an ongoing position. If there are not projects in 2026, what is that person doing? Then are we firing that CFO, or what are we doing afterwards?
No, I would look towards an operation that's running 15 million plus in revenues with 45 employees, managing grant income. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm guessing over 50 million a year. That treasury function and management of all that ongoing grant management would definitely warrant that position.
So, not that I'm knowledgeable about grant management, but grant management alone would probably be a $150,000 a year job. So now you're talking about a CFO that is dual rolled as a grant manager as well.
Are you proposing we do two positions here then?
No, I'm just saying when we're doing these numbers, we should maybe have the description of what they're intended to do before we give a number and include it in the budget.
And again, where we're going here is from a high level budget that we include 200,000 to have our HR contractor come in and tell us what we would have to. So we've got a placeholder in here.
Or
And
what we can get for 200 grand, is that more like, what can we get for that dollar amount?
I think just to throw in, I mean, we haven't made any decisions, we don't know anything about that. So I think it's just, is it worth us considering, and we get down the road, we can determine what that role would be, what they would, entail, et cetera. And, really from my perspective, at a very high level, we've got $118 million worth of assets that we're managing or more. We've got 45 million in cash that we're managing. And if we could pick up 1%, and I think we have a tremendous staff, they've done a great job bookkeeping, great job on all of that stuff. But if we picked up 1%, that's 450,000 to our bottom line. So I don't know what the role is, and we may not do the role, but I just think it's good for us to put that here so it's a discussion we have. And if we can't get more out of that role than it's costing us, then we shouldn't do it.
What do you mean by picking up 1%?
I'm sorry?
What do you mean by picking up 1%?
Well, if we picked up a 1% return on our cash.
That's what PFM is hired to do.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're the absolute best person to doing it, if they're doing it compared to all the other managers, I don't know. But I think we should know.
That's what we're now under contract.
Yeah, if this is something that you don't wanna do, Sean, it's not gonna work, and I get it, so I'm just saying what we're talking about now is putting that into the placeholder. We can talk about it.
I'm just making the point that we hired PFM to do exactly what you said. If there's another percent out there, they better be calling the rules. But we're limited under state statute in terms of what we can invest in. And that they're following state statute for us and our.
Sean, the CFO management is, again, timing, drawdowns, when it makes more sense to borrow money short-term, is there grant eligible reimbursement? This is all stuff that grinds further. Remember, before PFM, we had all our cash reserves and basically money market accounts at fractional interest rates.
Mr. Chair, the money market rate was fractional. I'd be careful with that statement.
What the interest rate was.
Yeah, I'd be
It wasn't
careful.
until First International Bank and Trust told us, hey, there's an opportunity under state statute.
We are
When
gonna
the
go
treasurer's-
back,
But
Sean,
no,
Sean,
you just made a false statement.
stop, Sean,
No, hold on.
stop.
First International Bank is the one that
Stop.
told us that there was an investment vehicle where we could earn additional interest under state statute. Treasury started to move, Rick knows this
Stop.
firsthand.
Yeah.
Stop. We're trying to get to a point here where we've got CFO management capabilities. If it has to be hired individually, part-time, full-time, whatever it may be. But the function of this board is to go through this budget and to do these things. If we're going to go back and look back at different practices, we can do that all day long. Let's move forward with it. And if you want, Rick, if you'd like to enter an objection to it, I would entertain a motion to add the CFO position potentially to the budget, so it's available to us as we go forward.
Mr. Chair, I think talking about it is great, but I'd like the scope of what they do defined very clearly before we go down that road.
What do you mean?
Let me just kind of throw in something here. I mean, first of all, what we're talking about is a position that would report to you, Sean. They'd be your employee. I think one of the things that I've witnessed in the last 3 months is there's a lot of confusion with the city. Should we ask for another mill or not? I mean, they're concerned about our reserves. I mean, they're concerned about a lot of things, and that pressure falls on you, Sean. And I think having someone that's trained in that area would help us build our case to not only the city, but the public on how we're balancing things out, preparing and solidifying those things. And maybe not, but I guess I think it's worth considering. So that was, and I didn't mean to get in that whole debate, but we can just forget it right now and let's bring it up on another meeting if you want. But I would support adding it in right now. We're not making a final decision.
Was there a motion to add in the CFO position?
I'll make a motion to add in the CFO
Is
position.
there a second?
One second.
And I would speak in favor of that as again, this is at budget level, putting a dollar amount in so that we don't have a situation where we're trying to add it in later. The intent's there. We would bring in our human resource contractor and help us with the process. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, I would ask that we have the human resource contractor give us a scope of duties of that CFO, because it is not like a public corporation or a private corporation. There is intergovernmental operations dealing with FAA grants. There's a lot of those nuances that I think are important about the position.
All right. I think you've gone beyond the scope of the motion. The motion is simply to include the CFO and a dollar amount of $200,000 and to continue with the process. Call the roll.
Hagan,
No.
Bird,
Aye.
Capita,
No,
Heckman,
Aye.
Cosmo.
Aye. Motion carries. So that will then become part of that. So we've got 25 minutes. Let's go through this, the rest of this as quickly as we want to.
So the second section is the fire department, we received 5,617,005 on page 11. Fire department, by and large, 100% of the cost for the fire department that we have is reimbursed by the airlines. Go down to the next section, 7,007, where it says police. That number came from the City of Fargo Police Department. That would be their cost that they estimate in 2024, $488,246 for the TSA required unguard at the checkpoints. In terms of the benefits in the narrative that I provided to you, I just engaged for the Public Health Insurance Trust and Brown & Brown. I've included a 10% increase in the 2024 premium. They believe it's going to end up in the 7 to 9% range. We should hopefully have a number on that sometime, maybe late July or mid-August, as far as what they're looking at in terms of a health insurance increase. Really no change in dental or long-term disability. Those benefits are provided through Pro. What we did last year is we froze the employee's share of health insurance for a single plan. So each employee pays $71.50 per month for a single plan. They pay $370.24 for a family plan. And I would recommend that we continue to freeze that amount for 2024 and that the airport authority pick up any difference in that amount. I think the cities may be paying a little higher percentage of the share than what we are right now, but it's approximately 80-20, approximately maybe 80.
Mr. Chair, do we know what the county does?
I'm not sure right now. I'll check, I'll ask Bob this morning.
The reason I ask is we don't want to cannibalize against each other. It's just a revolving door between the three entities, county, city, and airport, so.
Agreed.
So if we keep the share the same, the annual cost, I'm estimating a little over $284,000. I'd mentioned that a couple of meetings ago that we could consider paying 100% of the health insurance premium for employees. That estimated the annual cost to be a little over $340,000. That's just based on those that are in the plan now. It's possible other employees may decide to join the plan if it were provided by the airport authority. The other thing you could consider is the airport authority could pay 100% of the single plan, and the estimated annual cost for that is a little over $111,000 based on current participation. So that's something you could look at. Bismarck pays 100%, and some of the other airports.
Would you like our pro resources, our human resources kind of to come in and kind of talk about what they're seeing in the market? We've got the dollar amounts in here. Philosophically, I do not like leaving the employees with a fixed dollar amount of $71 to pay. What happens over time in those systems is the total value of the insurance, it's not really considered that. Employees look at it and say, oh, this is great, we pay $70 for insurance. But as the cost escalates each year, I would rather adjust the percentage up to accommodate, that, than having a kind of a fixed charge in there. And it helps everybody understand the tremendous burden some of these benefits cost. That's just my opinion on it. I'm certainly not trying to shift the expenses to employees at this point, given the environment we're in. That we adjust it rather than just locking it at 71 and letting the total cost just run up.
But I think, Mr. Chairman, the long-term concept is if an employee pays a percent of their health care,
Right.
then they're conscientious about what the healthcare costs are and what's happening, and the idea is that they've got skin in the game and will help keep those costs down.
Yeah.
If they pay a flat fee of 71 forever.
Yeah.
No, they're not really engaged in that piece, probably better off just paying 100% of it, not having to share any, but.
Right.
So I would agree that that should be floating with the cost for healthcare, so they're aware of that.
Well, I think we're also in a rapidly transitioning employment atmosphere. I mean, it would probably be good to hear from Pro Resources.
Are we comfortable that we've got, at this point, you included 10% increase, and so we are accounting for some of those. We do have an interesting situation that we went through last time with our health insurance provider, is that if we're gonna cancel, we typically have had to cancel before we know what our new premium is gonna be. So, I don't know if we've overcome that, but.
Remember last time we were kind of left with options because we were late to the table.
Yeah, and the way the contract's set up, trying to address this, that we don't know what the increase is, but we would have had to already cancel a year prior.
And I think if you recall, Pro Resources that indicated that the alternatives are significantly more expensive. So
Yeah, no, I'm.
even as expensive as you think the North Dakota Public Health Insurance Trust is, it's the best option that's out there, and that has not changed.
No, the problem is that our cancellation has to exceed what we know that the rate will be. So, to me, that says if I'm ever caught in a situation like that, I cancel every year. But.
And that's where it's maybe helpful to hear from Pro
Yeah.
Resources.
All right, let's keep going.
Okay, so we went through the benefits, I guess, on page 12. You get into other services, engineering, just architectural. You'll see the parking management fee, $906,000 was projected by SP Plus for 2024. Pretty self-explanatory, I think the rest of them. Page 13 is you're looking through water and sewer from the city, custodial services for the TSA, garbage, snow clearing estimate, building repairs. Just looking through page 13, if you see anything that jumps out, I got a question, let me know. Pretty self-explanatory. Page 14, property insurance and liability and auto insurance are pretty much stabilizing at that range. Phones, computers. And both, you have to just remember 7,000 is operations and maintenance, 7,005 is the fire department, so if you see something in there with the 7,005, that's all fire department. Travel through 14, page 15.
Sean, are we still doing any reimbursement, leasing, cars, anything for the employees at all?
Just Darren and myself have it's back in the benefits on page.
Page 12.
Page 12, so $2,000 a year, it's whatever the city's doing, I guess. And we haven't checked to see if the city's reimbursement rate has changed. You can take it away if you want, I don't care.
No, that's $2,000 a year for the director and assistant director at this point. And
Is that for mileage or is it for a car?
Auto allowance, no, I don't know.
You use your own vehicle.
And then, but you get reimbursed mileage also, you know. So there's no mileage ever.
Oh, okay.
expense.
It used to be a mileage deal, but just a flat fee now.
Just a flat fee, so the only time they get reimbursed mileage or any of the employees is if they go use their personal vehicle to go to this conference or airport.
Yeah.
And cell phones and everything, that's all.
Used to have a cell phone allowance, so that went away.
Okay. Good.
So page 15, just we go through general supplies, gasoline, fuel, electricity, Excel, that was their best budget estimate. They don't have any projections, obviously, for the terminal expansion yet, but in 2024, we'll be getting an estimate from Excel on what they think the additional space will require. Page 16, sand, salt, gravel, you see 140,000. A lot of that has to do with the chemical that we're using for de-icing. Machinery equipment, there's 2.1 million there on page 16, kind of towards the bottom third. That is for the equipment that you approved a few meetings ago, that will be delivered in 2024. 2.1 million. That's good. So I think, questions?
Sean?
Yes.
Are the equipment purchases are all through like a Sourcewell or a blended vend out?
Sourcewell or HG.
Okay.
GA, yeah, that's correct. So, yeah, we're looking at page 17, 11,356,000 in total expenses is what's projected. So right now, well, there's a couple $100,000 I'll add in there for a CFO. Net income going to be a little over, 2.3 million roughly, based on the current projections. That's with the 3% cost of living, the 10% increase in insurance, and the changes. So I'll make some tweaks, but we're looking at roughly a little over $2 million in revenue over expenses for 2024 in the operations and maintenance budget. So, I don't know if you have any questions on that. We still got 563 and the other ones to go through, which it wasn't up there very long. Any questions on that? 561? So, then if you want to go back to page 6.
One second here. And we've talked about this when we were talking about revenue. So our 22 budget was 10.5 million, we actually came in at 14.7. That was influenced by CARES. Correct?
Correct.
So our 23 budget was 4 million. It's looking like, in net income, it's looking like that's gonna be, project out to the year end. I think we're gonna exceed that
Hopefully.
by,
It's like the,
what do you think?
Based on car rental and some parking revenue, maybe a couple million. And then there's some CARES money that's coming. That's gonna be on the construction side versus the operations side. By and large, it's a little.
So, as we look at the 24 budget, now it's 25 million. Pretty conservative at this point, pretty aggressive, how do you feel?
Me, conservative, I think.
No, it's the same thing.
I try to be conservative on revenue and
As we all
on
do.
expenses. That's how it's always worked. We do a zero-based budget, and say, okay, for every dollar that comes in, where it's gonna get spent.
Right.
Zero-based budget. So if you're back on, page 6, now we're looking at the 563 amount there. The largest that you see there, the 29,281,441 primarily, those are numbers that came right from McGough, based on their projections for what the cash flows will be for the terminal project in 2024.
Hang on one second here. We're switching to 563, which is
Yeah,
construction
page six.
improvement. Construction, this is a separate,
And what page are we on now?
It's on page 6, let's go back to page
Okay.
6.
So, Mr. Chairman, going back to page 18.
Yep.
So I guess high level, 2022, we made 14 million. 23, we're projecting 4 million. 24, projecting 2.5 million.
right.
That is because of CARES. Because there CARES funds involved.
CARES funding?
So that was the change between 22 and 23. So we got CARES coming in 23.
Yes.
So we would expect that Fort, you said though that that's gonna go into construction rather than operations.
But that's in the 561 budget.
Yeah.
So where was that line item in the pages you just went through?
Line item for.
561, the CARES. Where we're going from 4
There
to 2.
isn't any projected in 2024.
Okay, but where is it projected in 25 or 23?
Well, 23 would be,
What section? Other services?
well, you've only got the 561 projection here. It's part of the intergovernmental revenue in grant areas.
I mean, our revenue is more in 24 than it is in 23. So it can't be the CARES that's affecting that drop in net income. The revenue's actually up in 24. We're going from 12.1 to 13.8.
I think the biggest jump there is increased parking and car rental revenue. That's the biggest jump.
Right, but our revenue's up, so our expenses are obviously up. So the revenue's up $1.7 million, and at the bottom line, we're down $1.5 million. So our expenses must be up $3 million as compared to 23. I'm just, again, looking at the big picture, and
493.
if someone says to me, why have your expenses gone up over $3 million, what do we tell them?
I don't know.
And I'll look into 2023, Rick. I think what that is probably depreciation is in there, which we've never budgeted before. In fact, if you look in there's some, on page 19.
Yeah, I would be really hard pressed to have depreciation in our cash balance sheet.
Yeah, so on page 19, 2022, actual and 2022 budgeted. There isn't any depreciation budgeted for 2023 or 2022.
Okay, where at?
It's on page 19, kind of towards the bottom, there's some depreciation. You look at 2022, 2023 budget.
Yeah, I don't see it. Where is it?
Total 493.64 miscellaneous expense.
So we didn't budget any depreciation in 2023, nor do we in 2024. That's an accounting or auditor amount that's put in later in the audit section.
But that would do the exact opposite, Sean. We're saying we had an expense of 4.7 million in 2020. In 23, we don't have it.
Yeah.
So that would say we could add the 3 and 4.7. We've got an $8 million gap or higher expenses in 23 and 24 than 22.
Till depreciation is included.
Right. Well, no, it's not. Here it's 0, but it's
Because
gonna.
they don't do it. We don't know what it is.
Well, the depreciation in 22 actual
It's
is
5.2.
reducing net income.
So, Mr. Chair, we will have depreciation in 23, but it's calculated end of year and not assumed or done month to month.
But it should be in the budget. Our 23 budget it should be
23
calculated in the
budget.
budget. So I'm just saying that these are some of my frustrations that we need to have a handle on this. I mean, we've got a responsibility, and if we're comparing 22, 23, and 24, then we ought to have apples to apples to apples. And if there's a difference, there ought to be a footnote down below that says what's that difference, so we can easily look at it and determine.
Yeah, the other one that's missing, if you're looking on page 4, is asset reclassification. That's done by the auditors at the end of the year as well. So there isn't anything budgeted for asset reallocation. That's the 950.7.
I didn't quite follow what you were talking about, Sean, on page 4.
It's on page 4. So asset reclassification takes out 8 million, takes out 12 million. It's at the bottom of page 4. You see that? There's nothing in 2023 or 2024, because that's a year-end audit.
Right. Yeah, again, I mean, so that increases, that's an offset to expenses, so it increases the revenue by 12 million.
Right.
I'm like, what the heck does that mean for 23 and 24? I'm not an accountant, but anyway, I don't mean
I think
to,
what you look at, when you see the 22 actual at 14.8 million, 14 budget, or 22 budget was 10.5 million, so pretty big actual exceeding budget. And now we're going to 23 at 4 million, and we don't really know what that looks like if we run 23 to year end. But I'm guessing it's 2 to 3 or 4 million above. And so when we look at 24 budget, a lot of people might look at us and say you're sandbagging at 2.5 million in net income. Given our history of 22 and 23. We need to get a little closer there somehow.
Mr. Chair,
And if it is accounting issues, then we should have.
Mr. Chair, is asset reclassification done when projects are completed and then shifted to the balance sheet? Okay.
But within the budget, as Mr. Bird was saying, we are with GAAP accounting here, in budgeting, we should have some feel for what that is, and perhaps balance tax and accounting can give us some numbers there that would get us closer. If you look at this thing going from 10 to 4 to 2, we're projecting disaster. Long term.
well, that's my concern. I mean, we obviously
And we
we're
are.
making some
Yeah.
pretty big decisions on terminal expansion, possibly parking and these different things. We don't wanna set it up, I mean, we wanna be smart about it and set it up. So, again, I really appreciate, Mr. Chairman, taking the time to go through this. I didn't expect that we'd have everything perfect, but I think it's really good for us to, and doing this, I really appreciate that. And this is just a preliminary budget, I mean, it's a
Right.
budget, we can modify and change it, but
563 in the airport construction and improvement dashboard, and the actual. Sean, help us understand 563 is what we might have infrastructure or any construction project is likely to run through here, but
Yeah, 563, 7004 are non-AIP projects that could still be eligible for PFC reimbursement or state grants. 7006 is where we put projects that are eligible for airport improvements or federal reimbursement.
so again, if we look at 23 budget, 43.3 million, we're projecting 24 or 33 million, 33.3 or 33.4. That's based on, at this point, just the terminal expansion, remodeling, and other capital improvement projects that will run through 563. And so those are the revenue sides of this, where we're, in 23, we had 47 million budgeted. 24, we're dropping that by 10 million. Are we comfortable, we're gonna hit the 47 million in 23?
Could be a little less than that, it all depends on, because I believe Jeff, Fargo Debt Center decided that they're not moving forward with the phase 2 of the North J project.
I guess I haven't received official confirmation for that, but it's moving in that direction.
So when we awarded the bid to Northern Improvement for first phase, there was another one that was hanging out there until Fargo Jet Center came to terms with a possible tenant. I guess we heard verbally that they weren't going to move forward. So there's $5 million there. So, like you see, the 2023 budget was put together in May or June of 2022 when there was a lot of unknowns, same as what we're trying to do now, trying to project out.
Just trying to track where we are year to date as it reflects.
May come in less.
Okay, so, let's talk about, this is where the mill levy comes in, is that under intergovernmental revenue?
Yeah, 563, and what I put in there is the 803,000, what was the? 803,291. It's the information I got from the county and from the city of assessor, and we budget for the net. So the amount that you see there is the net.
Which account is that, the levy? Just transfers in 391.
Yeah, it's on page 11. Non-operating property taxes, 1,526,258 is 95% of 2 million.
What was the amount?
1,526,258. So when you certify the mill levy bond, you're always set to 15 to 20% more than what is projected because they don't finalize that until October.
So as we approach the city and talk about what we're gonna do with the mill levy, the intent is that the mill levy dollars come in 563. Can they move out of 563? Can they move out of 563? So would the board have the authority to move it to operations or move it to?
But it's never been done, I guess.
No, I'm just so the intent has always been we put the property tax dollars into 563.
Jim can attest to it. I mean, that was the agreement the airport authority made with Herschel Ashkowitz and all the other mayors prior, is that it always goes towards infrastructure.
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, this gets at the core of the issue with the city. And I think having this in that 563 long-term construction to improve the terminal, improve the airport is critical, and I think that's what we tell the city we're doing.
Yep.
And I'm, personally, I think that's the purpose of the mill levy. That's why the state's authorized it for airport authorities. I don't see us using it for anything else, but if we did, the city can pull the plug, if you will, any year. But I really hope we look at it as long-term. And I want to make one compliment for Joan, too. And I want you to know this, because she put a tremendous amount of work together, and we're spending $700,000 a year. The people on the airport are paying in property tax to the city of Fargo. So I just want to make sure that that message gets back to the city commission, that there is $700,000 or $670,000 of tax revenue going to the city of Fargo.
All right, and like I said, the only
Mr.
thing I
Chairman,
would suggest on
To back up to your question about health premiums,
Yep.
Cass County, for an employee only pays 7% or $46 a month. Cass pays $622. Employee plus dependents, the employee pays $175. Cass pays $1,093. It's 14%. And employee plus spouse, the employee percentage is 21%, and employee plus family is 21%.
Thank you.
Or they pay $311 a month for employee plus spouse, and employee and family is $463.
Thank you. We can make sure we get that information to Pro Resources as they prepare their presentation.
Forward that to Joan.
I can give you this.
My only suggestion on 563 says, the mill levy, the property tax is something that people focus on. Let's just call it that. I think you had to turn intergovernmental. Mill levy, property taxes. Let's be as descriptive as possible. And then 569, or 564 is, passenger facility charge. That's all, the revenue there comes from what?
That's from the airlines that reimburses us for projects that have been completed. The current application we're collecting on started at $9 million some dollars, and we're estimated to complete the collection on that in 2025.
And that revenue is per passenger, how do we figure that?
This is 50 cents per passenger. The airlines get it 39 cents for the airport, and the passenger and keep 11 cents for themselves.
Is that set, is that a set amount?
Set by Congress.
It's set by Congress, so that's nationwide. Any difference in airport size?
No.
Just flat out 450, doesn't change.
Yeah, so on page 11, you'll see that $2,305,000, and then on page 10, if you go back one, you'll see where it gets transferred to the 563 construction fund to reimburse for where the project's going.
So comes in at $4.50, net 11 cents, and goes back out into 563. Correct.
Each month I transfer the funds from that bank account back to, we're required by the FAA to have a separate account for the PFC.
Then the last one, 569.
Parking, so the big one there is $4 million for architectural services, which based on your action today, that could be spent now in 2023 instead. And then the balance is for the parking garage, which I think should be 36 million on page 16.
All right. There is the budget.
The page numbers have been great. Thank you for adding those.
Questions, discussion, put this back on the agenda for final approval at next July meeting. If we will do it, there's no objection.
Which is July,
25.
The only change I heard was 200,000 in one line, the other changes.
July 25th. I'm gonna be on the way home from our national conference from counties. So, I'll be in the air on the 25th.
I
Can we
will,
get it by the 25th, or can we push it to August?
Well, you can preliminary, sometimes, you can do it anytime you want. As long as the city has a copy of the proposed budget, the final budget can come anytime before October 1st. But the mill levy would need to be certified at the next meeting.
Well, I guess the question is there any reason we couldn't just approve this now?
We can approve it now as.
I mean, I don't know, I think we talked through some of the issues pretty well.
It's really not gonna change much other than if you decide to reduce the cost of living from 3% to something less. And if you decide to do something with the health insurance, if you wanna go to a percentage like you talked about, 90-10 or 80-20, whatever you decide, those tweaks can be made once you make those decisions more into those in the budget with assistance of appropriate sources.
So do we typically, like, towards the end of 2023, revisit the budget for 24 and make changes, or not?
It's an ongoing process, they certainly
Right.
have, I think there's been some years where they've had it like in September or October, but not really in any detail.
So I think what, for me, what I'd like to do is let's just approve this now, but maybe as a board, kind of next October, November, look at revisiting it. Because we're gonna have a lot of different numbers,
Sure.
and then really set it kind of more firm for 2024.
Certainly amend the
And
budget.
does that work?
We'll know a lot more about the Trumbull project
Yeah.
in October, November than we do today. Right
Yeah.
now, it's a complete guess. It's a total
And
guess.
the county does make budget adjustments.
What's that?
I said, the county makes budget adjustments.
Yeah.
If we approve a budget, sheriff comes in and says, hey,
They'd never.
this happened, we make a
they'd
budget
never do
adjustment.
that, would they?
They all do it.
So I'd move we approve the budget.
The preliminary budget is presented.
Yeah, the 2 mills. Is that-
And we certainly,
Do we need to have the 2 mills in that motion, or is that presumed?
That'll be a separate,
That's-
motion.
Yeah.
It's in there, the mills are in there.
So you want another motion relating to that after this
no,
motion?
the mills are in the preliminary budget at this point. So we would have, what we asked for
But-
is a dollar amount, and that's converted to mills.
Yeah.
Do you want us to do that now as well?
That would all be part of this. There is 1.6 million in there.
So if we pass this motion, then that's done.
It is, we'll still do an official certification of the mill levy under state
Yeah.
statute, which will be at the next meeting. So you're kind of doing it repetitive,
Gotcha.
so you'll certify, say, 1.7 million not to exceed 2.0 mils.
Okay.
That's a separate action under the statute.
Okay.
And does that have to be at the next meeting, or could we do that after this?
It's not on the agenda, so I would,
I look at it as being part of the approved budget. So we're approving the preliminary budget.
Yeah, I mean, our intent is that if we do it next week.
And the one thing is we're seeing wide swings in revenues and expenses here. The discussion going forward is a lot of firms, a lot of companies that do have differing flows like that will continually recast their budget. So they'll do 3 months of actual and then recast the remaining 9 months. That might be something that we'd want to consider, given how we're seeing our revenues and expenses kind of jump around.
Well, not to belabor everything, but what I would really like to see that I think would be very powerful for us is we get to the end of the year and we do the same thing with a budget, we put our best budget together. And then as we're going forward every month, because we have different expenses, and I mean, it's not the same every month, that we rely on Sean and the staff to simply, when we meet, say, we're on track or off track.
Yeah.
And as long as we're on track, we don't really need to spend a tremendous amount of time unless someone has a question. If we're off track, then that's something that we probably as a board need to figure out, okay, what do we need to get the same net income at the end of the year? And maybe make a decision that then sets a forecast for us. And then again, we're just,
Monthly or quarterly?
whenever we're off track, we'd meet and do it.
Make a budget adjustment.
Yeah, exactly. But as long as we're on track, if we spent the time initially on the budget, we don't need to rehash absolutely everything.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second, call roll.
Who was the second?
I did.
Hang
Aye.
Bird.
Aye.
Applicant.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Vote with receipt. Call roll.
Hang
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.